What's up YouTube? Sharkno Boy here. In this little video I'm going to be running a breakdown on my Shaddoll deck and how the Archetype works and how the Archetype runs. I have been experimenting and playing around with Shaddolls a little bit and trying to figure out different ways on how to play this deck and just learning the Archetype in general, and I think I've figured out pretty much just about everything, so I'm gonna share with you the deck list. We got Shaddoll Falco, I run 2 of these. Chaos, I run 2. Hedgehog, I run 3. Ash Blossom, I run 2 in case, I run into a floodgate or something like that, or a flood swamp, whatever the term is. Wendy, I run 3. Shekinaga, I run 3. Shaddoll Dragon, I run 3. Hound, I run 2. Nail Shaddoll Aerial, I run 3 of these. Genius, I run 2. Beast, I run 2. Hail Shaddoll Hollow, I run 3 of these. Those are the monsters. For spells and traps, we have Shaddoll Fusion, I run 3 of these. Nefe, I run 2. The field spell, Curse of the Shadow Prison, I run 2. El Shaddoll Fusion, I run 3. For the traps, Sinister Shadow Games, I run 2 of these. Aeon, I run 2. Shaddoll Incarnation, I run 3 of these. And Shaddoll Core, I run 2 of these. And Shaddoll Schism, I run 1. For the extra deck, El Shaddoll Winda, I run 2. Wendigo, I run 1. Apkalon, I run 2. Grista, I run 2 of these. El Shaddoll Construct, gotta have it in a Shaddoll deck, run 2 of them. Anoyatalis, I hope I pronounced that right, I run 2. Shekinaga, I run 2, and the Link Monsters, I run 2 of each. So, for the uses of each of these cards, we'll get the obvious out of the way first. Ash Blossom as a hand trap, gotta have it in there. Falco, I run 2 to special summon any monster from the graveyard. And Shaddoll Falco can also special summon itself from the graveyard. So I run it for that reason. Chaos, I don't really use all that much. I mainly use it just for bringing Construct out. And on occasion, if I get the chance, if I have a higher level monster in my hand, I can flip summon it to special summon a monster from my hand, or any monster in general, and without having to worry about using up my normal summon. Shaddoll Hedgehog is a key card here. Its flip effect is really good because I can add 1 Shaddoll spell or trap from my deck to my hand, except for this one, because it has to have the word Shaddoll in the name. I usually use it to pull out Shaddoll Schism. I'll get to that later. Wendy is also a pretty good card in the same vein as Falco, where I can special summon 1 monster from my deck, whether it's through the flip effect or the graveyard effect. Shekinaga is pretty handy at getting rid of problem monsters that can be destroyed by effects. And I also found another way, which I will get into later. Its graveyard effect I can use for different combos and things like that. Pretty useful, actually. Shaddoll Dragon, I use this to get rid of spell cards, or that my opponent is running. And can sometimes be useful for getting rid of monsters that can only be special summoned and not normal summoned. Like monsters from the extra deck, things like that. But what you really want is the graveyard effect. That's really handy. And that can tie in the Shaddoll Falco. And you could just keep that looping for however long needed. Shaddoll Hound I don't really find myself using all that much, but its flip effect is pretty good because you can actually cycle this into other Shaddoll cards. Ariel, obvious. Like, this is a great answer to DBE. And if any of your Shaddoll cards are banished, you can actually just use this to get them back. Shaddoll Genius. It's kind of hit or miss, really, honestly, but it does have its uses. Shaddoll Beast, pretty obvious. Get cards from your deck to top up. Shaddoll Hollow is also very useful for banishing. So I mainly use it for that. Now on to the spells. Shaddoll Fusion. This is pretty much like any other fusion card, you know. Like Gem 9 Fusion, Polymerization, Super Poly, whatever the case. But what you really want is to wait for your opponent to have a special summon monster from the extra deck, then use it. Because then you can mill cards from your deck to get the card you need in response to it. Nefe is kind of in a similar vein, but it's also pretty useful. Like, if you don't have Shaddoll Fusion, you can use this as a substitute. Now, Curse of the Shadow Prison. This is honestly kind of a pretty mean card. Each time a Shaddoll monster is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, place one spellstone counter on this, or each monster is sent, blah, 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 blah. This card, you definitely want to top up with Shaddoll Fusion cards, so that if you have at least 3 or more spellstone counters, and your opponent has a monster on the field, you can use that monster to fusion summon one of the Shaddoll monsters from the extra deck. Really mean. And Shaddoll Fusion, you can do this in quick play stuff. However, unlike Shaddoll Fusion, Shaddoll Fusion doesn't have the benefit of being able to mill cards from the deck if your opponent has a special summon monster on the field, so you can't really use it for that. Sinister Shadow Games. I've recently come into terms with the use for this card. There's a lot of combo potential with this card here. I'll show you in the demonstration. And Shaddoll Aeon. This is actually pretty great in a pinch, in case you need it. Shaddoll Incarnation. This is actually useful for 2 things. You can special summon a Shaddoll monster from the graveyard, or a Shaddoll card face up if it's already face down to get the effect, or do the reverse if that monster has already used its effect. You can change it to face down position, and then on your next turn you can flip it face up again to get its effect off again. Shaddoll Core, I have found, is better for milling fodder. The benefit is that you can use it to get one of your spells or traps back into your hand to recycle resources. And Shaddoll Schism, if you're a Shaddoll player, you will probably already know what this does. But for those of you who don't know, I'll explain. You can banish any 2 Shaddoll monsters from your field or graveyard to special summon a monster from the extra deck, but it cannot attack directly. So it's a give and take thing. Special summoning from the deck, but it cannot attack the turn. However, it also has a benefit of allowing you to send one graveyard, the one monster your opponent controls, to the graveyard with the same attribute as that monster. So this has a lot of use. Now, for the extra deck monsters, El Shaddoll Winda. This is basically a floodgate in monster form. But it not only affects your opponent, it also affects you. Because while it's on the field, neither player can special summon more than one monster per turn. And I've stated a lot in groups that this card by itself can shut down a lot of decks in the meta. It can really shut them down really fast. It can't shut down everything. It's not a complete lockout, but it does slow the game down to where, depending on the type of deck that your opponent is running, you can strategize and play off of that. Wendigo, I honestly haven't had really much use for. Except if I'm going up against an all-wind attribute deck, I can use that in conjunction with Schism. App Cologne is very, very good. Because I have run into quite a few annoying cards with annoying effects. So if you fusion summon this card, you can target one card your opponent controls and negate his effects. It's negated indefinitely. This card is great against cheeky decks. And Grista shuts down special summoning, and I recently found out that it's actually really effective against pendulum decks. I'll get into that later. Also, Construct, if you've been in the game for a long time, you know what this does. For those of you who don't know, if your opponent has a special summon monster on the field, it automatically destroys it during damage calculation, regardless of that special summon monster's attack power. This is a really, really strong card to have. You can also use it to mill in the deck to gain combos, to get what you need. Anoyatelis, I still don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. This card is actually pretty good against gimmick decks, where if your opponent is running nothing but spells and traps that can special summon themselves from the grave, this has the potential to shut that down. I don't know for sure. I have not actually run that yet. I will test it though. Shekinaga is a surprisingly underrated card, because if your opponent has a special summon monster and it activates its effect while you have this card in the field, you can negate that effect, pop it, and then send one card to the extra deck. Krista, same thing, except when it comes to special summoning. Then you have the Link monster Shaddoll construct, where you require 2 flip monsters, and all of the regular monsters in the Shaddoll archetype are flip monsters. So it's really easy to bring this out. You can actually use this to mail out for any Shaddoll card in your fusion deck, depending on what you have on the field at the time. And that is how each card operates. That's how they work. I will run a couple of demonstrations in solo mode to give you an idea on how the deck works. So in solo mode, I'm just going to do a basic rundown of how this deck runs, how it works. What I'm going to do, let me just change decks here real quick. Is first I'm going to play the Gem Knight deck. And remember what I said about special summoning from the extra deck. Now, I'm going to go second. And by the way, this archetype is great going first or second. So here we've top decked Wendy, Dragon, 2 Hollows, Shaddoll Fusion, and Sinister Shadow Games. I'm going to set that down. And then here I'm going to end, and then here I'm going to Shaddoll Fusion, I'm going to go into Grista. I'm going to use one of my Hollows and my Shaddoll Dragon. So this is going to be the special summon. I'm going to activate the effect of both monsters in the graveyard. I'm going to pop this. Chain Resolve. Pop. Send a card to the graveyard. See if we get lucky. Yes, we got Hedgehog. And because we also got lucky, we are going to banish the Hollow that we sent. To flip Wendy, get her effect off. And here we're going to get Shaddoll Beast. And now we're going to get Hedgehog on the field face down. All of that during the main phase. So, what you saw there is they activated a hand trap. So my Gristo into the graveyard. But I benefited off of that by getting me Shaddoll Fusion back, and then I could use it again on my next turn. So here I'm going to activate Sinister Shadow Games. And I'm going to send my other Wendy to the graveyard. To get Hedgehog's effect off. Now I'm going to get Shekinaga. And now, this is the important part. I'm using that to get Schism in my hand. So now I'm going to set the trap. I'm going to flip Schemata. Pop this. Get my app cologne, and remember, so now I have the opportunity to fusion summon, but I will not. So now we're going to activate Shaddoll's Schism. He's using polymer. The AI is using polymerization. We're going to get another Grista. And as long as we use at least one of the hollows in our graveyard, we're going to pop them. So the AI now has a fusion summon monster. So now we're going to activate Shaddoll Fusion. So all of that in one single chain, and then now we're going to get our Winda out. We're going to pop our Falco, and then we're going to send Falco and Schemata. And now we have our Winda. And now we have our last Wendy. So he just sent El Shaddoll Construct back to the extra deck, but that's fine. We still have plays that we can make. First thing we're going to do is wait. So now what we're going to do, we're going to activate Shaddoll Fusion. Get our second app clone here. This time we're not going to activate effect. Now we just banish, banish, banish. And that's just one such demonstration. Now, for the next demonstration, we're going to look at the pendulums. And see if I can show off Shekinaga's ability. Or, not Shekinaga. Grista's. So we're going to place Wendy face down on the field. So what we're going to do is we're going to banish. Activate Shaddoll Fusion. And now we are going to attack. Now we're going to set up for the next turn. And see, just like that. We pop, we discard, gain the benefit. Now, as you can see, there are no extra deck monsters. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our other Falco. Declare attack. Direct attack. Now what we're going to do. Now, normally we wouldn't be able to do this, but because we have Shaddoll core on the field, we can use it to get any Shaddoll fusion monster we want. So, I am going to choose Shaddoll Construct. And I'm also going to get the benefit of getting back another card. And now we're going to send Dragon, get its effect, choose the middle card, pop. The effect still goes in. And now we just set up for our next turn. Now we're going to set. Go into battle phase because it wasn't a special summon monster. The effect doesn't go off. And now the special summon 2. Pop, pop. This card doesn't matter. We'll get our Winda out. Banish. Banish. It's perfectly fine. Because now we can finish this. Put Schemata. Activate, pop. Enter battle phase, swing for game. So, that is just a rundown of how Shaddolls work. Just a basic rundown on the archetype. So, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like to let me know. If you want to see more Yu-Gi-Oh content in the future, just click the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And also be sure to hit that bell to be notified of future uploads that I will be doing. And if you're not subscribed already, why not? Just hit the button. It's right there. It's completely free. Don't worry about it. So, thank you all for watching, and as always, I'll see you all in the next one. Stay lovely, my friends.